was chosen to speak on how to use AI agents in workflows and software development. I've been here at the lab for about a total of 4 years, roughly. Been in the space for about 10 years, about a decade, and my skill sets has been like software developer and test, SDET, software testing, automation, and like they said, I've been starting to experiment with using AI. Started with ChatGPT when it came out in 22, 23. And just since I came back, just trying to figure out how to incorporate AI into software development workflows. So that's what we're going to cover today, is how to use them responsibly and some of the workflows and techniques that I've learned. So AI coding agents, the opportunity is to augment your abilities and not replace. That's going to be a common thing you hear in the news and the media is we're going to be replaced, our jobs, they're going to fire us all. And you hear that as being the case in some instances, but truth be told, it's not. It's just the same as the computer when it came out around the personal computer in the 50s and 60s. They thought the computer was going to take everyone's jobs, but obviously now 70 years later, we're using computers. We're not having a laptop do our jobs for us and they just have fired everyone off. So the same is true for AI, is learning how to incorporate AI into your workflows. You'll be able to augment your abilities, become faster, more knowledgeable, be able to learn, but you just need to have the correct approaches and workflows to take the most advantage of it. So that's what today's goal is going to be, is how to use AI agents to make you more effective and performant. So how I like to have thought about coding assistance is kind of a tiered approach or a spectrum. And so the first level I think we're all familiar with is ChatGPT. So you go to the browser, you log in, and you have a chat interface, and you can make one or more chats. So that's where I kind of think is the first ground level of coding assistance. You take some code, you go and say, hey, can you write me a script that does X or Y? It writes you some code, you copy it out, you put it into your IDE, and then you run it, doesn't work, or something else needs to change, you copy that back in, put it in the browser. So that's kind of that first level, but it was amazing when it came out. The second one that brings you a little bit closer to your own environment is the IDE integrated. So that's going to be essentially chat, but now it's in your IDE. So for example, I use VS Code quite often. So you open up that extension and you're chatting with it within your IDE, but that's all it is. And you just had a presentation on agents. This wouldn't be an agent. This is just chat. It's just respond back and forth. Maybe it can read a file. It can more easily read your files. But that's that level. And then the final level, which is kind of more the core of this talk, is agentic tooling. So those are tools like the one I'm going to demo today, RuCode. You may have also heard of Cursor and Windsurf, and those are proprietary solutions out there. So this one is more advanced automation. It can read, write files. It can run terminal commands. It can read the output from that. It can see what files you have open and what tabs. It can see your file tree. So whatever you're able to have access to, it also can see that. And now when you ask it, can you write me this feature? It says, okay, I have a better understanding of your environment, and it can go without you having to copy and paste it all into the browser. So why focus on IDE tools? Few main reasons. It's where you're comfortable and productive. So this obviously is going to be very software developer centric. So if you're not necessarily a developer, this is usually where developers go to write their code and update features for their applications. And so this is where they're comfortable. They're writing code, they're editing code, they're debugging, they're starting up their production server from there. So it's just comfortable where you're at instead of having to go into a new environment. Tools like these that I'm going to show is secure, so it's a bring your own model. So you can connect to your trusted provider. If you go to another job and they have their own trusted models, you'd be able to just connect to them. It boosts your efficiency. So like I said, instead of copying and pasting code back and forth into the browser, you have it right there where the code lives. And then also you get that deeper context. So your file tree, your tabs open. When you say, can you update this README? And it sees you have a README open. It says, oh, I see you have a tab open. Let me read that one. So that's that deeper context into your development environment. Has advanced actions, direct file interaction, multi-file awareness, like I said, terminal command. Obviously, all of these would have approval mechanisms, so it's not going to just start running a bunch of commands if you don't want them to. It'll always stop and ask, can I run this? And you can audit that. But I think the main reason of using an IDE and starting to get familiar with these agentic tools is it builds your intuition on how these tools are incorporating agentic workflows. So if you at a future company needs to help build an AI agent, you're already familiar with how agents work, the features that some of these tools have, to then incorporate it. And I'm going to show some of those workflows here in a minute. So effective and responsible AI use, you are the pilot. So it's not going off and around. There's always going to have to be that human in the loop. So AI will assist, but you are directing, you are telling it what to work on, and you're validating it. And above all else, validate all outputs. So that's going to be something that we harp on over and over. And that goes along with the main theme of underscoring this demo is going to be validation, dealing with hallucinations. If you guys have heard what those are, essentially, it just makes things up. And that's usually just a lack of context. And it's trained to give you an answer. So if it doesn't know the context or it doesn't know, it's still going to give you something. So you want to direct it in the best way possible, even prompting techniques to say, if you don't know, just tell me you don't know. You don't have to make it up. So that is all under the validation portion of this, where just test, verify all outputs, ensure that you're using approved and trusted models. Like I said, connecting to your organizations, planning complex tasks. So workflows are being realized that planning first is kind of a grounding step for these LLMs. So instead of just having it run off and just start coding, you can have it plan first and then, okay, as I were. Sorry about that. Okay, so the new workflows that are being found is to plan, to ground the model to prevent those hallucinations. So planning complex tasks, and I'll show that here in a second. Providing clear context, so better input equals better output. And also starting small and iterating on what you're trying to direct these agentic tools to do. So now we're going to get into some of the workflows that are being found using these agentic coding tools. And this first slide is going to cover agent persona modes. So if you've heard of personas, essentially it's just a system prompt that gives the AI agent direction on what it's to fulfill. So the tool that I'm going to be demonstrating, RuCode, has a couple built in. One's architect mode, so that's the think first plan. And then there's also a code mode, which is actually the execution. And there's also other modes like ask, debug, and orchestrator. Orchestrator being another advanced workflow that gives RuCode. Context management is huge. So if you have a code base and it has thousands of files that all have thousands of lines, to be able to load that in every time is going to blow your context window or your chat. So it's just too much context, too much information to load into these models. So one technique is called memory bank. So memory bank is just a system prompt, and it instructs the agent to go search, read the files, read the README, read documentation, read the source files, and then build a set of markdown files that cover the project brief, product context, system patterns, tech context, active context, and progress. So with these markdown files, then the agent, every time you start a task, will be able to get onboarded, essentially, to your working environment or to your code base. So that saves having to have it read your entire code base every single time. With these memory bank files and this technique, it would know that you had just finished a feature, you're going to work on another feature, you plan to work on something else. And so all of that information can be in these much smaller condensed markdown files that gives it that awareness. So now we'll get to what's called boomerang tasks. That's the technique, but in root code is orchestrator mode. So what orchestrator mode is you'll find even in ChatGPT when you're running through a chat and it's getting very, very long and the history is getting longer, it starts to get weird. It starts to act, its behavior starts to not give you as good code, good as performance, because you're just has so much in its context window that it's struggling trying to make sense of all of that. So what Orchestrator tries to do is it will be the delegator of subtasks in this tool. So you say, I would like to build a front-end application for a website, and make me a plan and go to orchestrator mode. Orchestrator say, okay, great, I'm gonna create a subtask to first line out the files, the file structure. So it'll open a brand new chat for you. In there, you instruct it and kind of work back and forth with it to build this file structure. And when it's done, it makes a summary and returns it back to the orchestrator. So the orchestrator is that kind of manager agent aspect of it, where it keeps track of the summaries of these subtasks, but each task stays clean, lean, and only the context that it needs. So it streamlines workflows, it maintains focus, and it helps break down very complex tasks for development. Because trying to do this in one single task, you just wouldn't be able to. So this is just a slide to kind of get people aware of the tools that are out there, and I put a couple cross sections on here. I'm really about open source, as my intro stated. So I like being aware of what tools are between open source and closed source. And then the y-axis is going to be between just web, non-agentic, to fully autonomous multi-agent. So that's kind of where we're heading, is sending off a job in the cloud. A team of agents will break down that work, complete it, and then send you a notification that the code is ready to review. So that's going to be up at that top level. In the middle is the IDE agentic layer. And so you can see root code over here with that little kangaroo. Is kind of where we're going to be at, is agentic IDE, not just the plain chat down there. All right, so let's see this in action. And hopefully I'm good on time, that I will reshare my screen and I'll open up VS Code. So we're just gonna run through kind of how to install it, what it looks like. See my screen? Okay, so VS Code is pretty common, and a lot of these tools start here. There may be other IDEs out there, but unfortunately, I just have the most experience with Visual Studio Code. So this is where I've found this tool called root code. And so it's just as simple as going to its marketplace, finding it, and installing it. There's a nice little video there to kind of show and demonstrate what it's capable of. But what I'm going to use root code for, so if we install this, and it's going to be over here in this sidebar right here. You can see I already have a repo, a couple of them, opened in the File Explorer, and root code extension window over here on the right. So can you guys see that, or do I need to zoom a little bit more? Maybe that might be a little better. Okay, so root code, all you have to do is install or set up any API key that you have access to. So I think it was brought up in the previous demo, where can we get free API access? So as long as you have an endpoint, then you can go and plug in the URL. Let's say in this instance, I'm using Google Gemini. You set up an account, you have a certain amount of free tokens, you put in your API key and select your model. There's also other providers. So I'll just go through a few: Amazon Bedrock, Anthropic. But if it's not one of the main ones, there's always this OpenAI compatible, which, as long as it has a base URL and an API, you can use this tool to plug in that API LLM. There's a few other features in here, like the thinking tokens. So if you guys are familiar with some of the reasoning functionalities of these models, this is where you can configure it. But root code has a lot of configurations I'm not going to cover in this demo. What I would like to demo is starting up kind of a demo site. And I had just named it MemeRank. So hopefully you guys will like this. I don't know if you can see this or not. No, you can't. Let's see. Portion of the screen. Okay. So this is just a demo site that I had created just to demonstrate this capability. You guys see that? Okay. So this is just a MemeRank site. What I want to do is I'd like to add a dark mode to it. So I'm going to use a previous task that I've tested with before. And I'm going to be in architect mode. So these are some of the modes that I had shown before. And then what I'm going to ask is, I'd like you to make a plan to add dark mode to the MemeRank site. So I'm going to start in architect mode. And we'll just kind of watch through as it works. So what it's going to do is it's going to break down my task and start reading or suggesting to read certain files. So you can see it's already asked, because it understands where I'm at, that there's these files that exist. So I can just approve all. Oh, of course, live demo. So a little guidance. I had run this and I changed the folder names from under it. So I think I will rename this back just to make that easier for it. Okay. So what it's going to do is it's going to start reading through these files and get an understanding of the UI code and the backend code. And so you can just act as a pilot, as my slides showed, that you're approving the requests. Another feature that it has is some automation in there. So you can read, you can write, access the browser. So there's a few features that you can just hit auto approve and just let it read through your code base. So we'll just hit recursively read. I'll zoom this out just a bit. Okay. So now we can see that it's caught on to the files that are important to add this functionality. And it will start to make a plan. Okay. And I can say, write this plan to a file. So if I have it write to a file, it will start writing a brand new markdown file. And this is great too for documenting your work. So it doesn't just stay in the chat window. You can actually commit this to your project or hand it over to a project manager and say, hey, here's an outline of what it would take to add this feature. So we'll just preview that, and there's the markdown file of the plan that it will take. From here, then you just switch to architect mode. So you can see it's asked me a question. And this is a big thing with Agentic, is that you can have that back and forth interaction with it. And so if I hit yes, let's proceed, it will ask to switch to code mode. So now we'll say, can we switch to code mode? And so we can implement this. And you can see it's already given me this is a new feature actually, of a to-do list of let's break this task down into the various components. So from here, you can start developing, running, viewing the code changes made, and just have that back and forth interaction. But the point of showing this was starting with planning, having it read the files it needs for context, and then you would act from there. So let me move on to that second feature that I mentioned, which was memory bank. So I will use a previous prompt that I have. So this is what you do on a brand new code base that doesn't have memory bank. So I'm going to just start a new task in code mode, and I'm going to say initialize your memory bank in the main directory. So this is kind of what this would look like when it initializes. So I've asked it to read the files first that you need to understand what this code base is about. Here it's, again, given a few suggestions on what it wants to read. Here you can also give it additional context. So you can write as many paragraphs as you want. You can bring in any other documents that your organization has to give it that context on what this project is, what are the goals, what you want to accomplish. So after it reads this, it will create a new directory called memory bank, and it will start writing these files. And this is going to be that same project brief, product context. You can see it asked to run a command, so it's going to make a new directory called memory bank. And there you go. You can see it popped up that directory there. So that's that terminal interaction that it has. And then there we go. So already working through writing the memory bank. And the benefit of this is you can actually commit this to your code base and now share it with your coworkers and new developers that join the team. And they have this start of documentation that's been written out. And it's not only good for humans, but also good for the agents to understand. So that's memory bank. So when you'd start up a new project, you would just say initialize or read your memory bank files. It will read just those markdown files and then know where to go from there. So I'm going to cancel this so we can not run out of time. And I'll show the last demo, which is the orchestrator mode. So start a new task with the prompt I already have. This time I'll go into Architect again to create a plan. And so this one says, I'd like you to implement a linked knowledge hub website using the Link Vault PRD. So PRD is just product requirement document. And so I've already had this written out that describes what this website would be. This could be from your development team or project manager that had written out what this website that they want you to build is. So I'm going to ask it to make me a plan to implement this. So it'll first want to read that markdown file. I'll hit approve. And I've changed the file from under it, but it should catch on. You think I'd learn after demoing enough that you don't change things right before demo. Try again. So I'm going to remove that numbering. There we go. So it'll outline this plan. And what I had in my task was then switch to orchestrator and subtask out the work. So also, I'm demoing, so I'm under a limited amount of time. Normally, you would read through this, you would go line by line, you would go feedback, you'd have a back and forth interaction. Just due to the sake of demo, I'm just kind of blazing through this. But there are different workflows that you can use. Some people like to just say go and let it just read and write, and they'll review it at the end. Or some people like to interact, action by action and see every single file that it writes and micromanage changes to you. So it's pretty much up to you how you'd like to do this. Okay, so it says it looks good. Let's proceed to the orchestrator. So I'll hit that question option or answer option. So this is what it looks like. Let's switch to orchestrator mode. So I'll hit approve. And you can see down here in the lower portion, we're now in orchestrator mode. So what it's going to do is it's going to break up this task, and now you can see it's going to create a new subtask in code mode. It writes up the task prompt for that, and when I hit approve, this is the magic of it, is it opens up a brand new session just with that task that was generated by the orchestrator. And now just for the sake of time, I'm going to say, I'm going to say, this is for a demo, can you fake the, okay, because I'm in demo. Let's pretend, okay, we developed that part of that subtask. So when it completes, it says, all right, this is everything that we've done, subtask complete. You can see the option here is complete, subtask, and return. So now that orchestrator is given that summary context, and now it's going to continue on, create another subtask, be it in code mode or additional planning, and continue that down the road. So that is those three workflows, and hopefully I didn't hit too hard a time, but that's my presentation.
Thank you. I could watch that all day. That was fascinating. We do have a few minutes left if anyone has questions. There is one in the chat. We can start here in person. I saw a hand back here first.
There we go.
Very simple questions. Probably I miss it. And so what's happening if you reject? Do you have more options?
What was that?
If you reject, so I see that you approve, but what happens if you reject one of the outputs?
Oh, what would happen? So if you reject it, the tool is set up to kind of give it hints. And when you hit reject, it will say the user has rejected your submission. So it will, what's useful when you reject it is to add reasoning in the text box and then reject and say, this is wrong. Like, this is totally wrong. I don't like how this is implemented. Reject. Then it gives it that context because you're essentially using it as what could be considered as an intern, and you're working with it. So if you guide it and say, no, I don't like this, you tell it why, then it'll say, okay, let me give you another suggestion. And then it will just give you another suggestion.
Okay, the feedback is important. Okay.
Yes,
Thank you.
exactly.
Hello, is this Mike? Okay, hi, I have a question. So very amazing demo. I thought that was really cool. In your example, you used one repo, but what if I want to compare two repos and work with both of them? Then does that work with this as well?
Yes. Yeah, so I had a couple files in there and I was working with one repo, but you can see there's a few folder structures. So you can either open up VS Code in that single directory, but what I have done for more complicated use cases where I need to have the UI repo code, I need to have the API repo code and our end-to-end tests code, I'll open VS Code in the top level directory, and then I just tell Rue, the UI code is under UI/, the end-to-end tests are under E2E, and the API is here. I want you to help me investigate implementing this feature that involves the UI, the API, and the end-to-end test. Can you help me with that? And so at that point, it just sees those subdirectories. The important part, though, is to guide it on what repos what and what not to read. So because there could be many other repos in there, and say, here are the repos I care about, and then you just go from there. So it has full access to whatever workspace you have open. So if you have multiple repos, it will be able to interact with those as well.
Follow up?
Yeah.
So I guess the use case for me is like I have repos and then like someone succeeds that repo and it's not even a fork, it's like a whole like evolution of that repo. And so when we're trying to compare two things, like yes, I can go back in the Git commits and compare each line, but can this just give me like a summary of like what was changed at like every file?
Yeah, so you're familiar with Git and you're using software development tools, you can have it run these in the terminal and gather that diff, gather those changes, and then intelligently tell you. I mean, it's great for what's called pull request or merge request reviews, where it can read the changes and you say, can you do a PR request on this code quality? Here are the changes. Can you give me a summary on what changed? Are there any issues, anything problematic? Like, you have to direct it what you want it to tell you, but yeah, it could definitely read. It has access to any, development tools that you have in the terminal that as long as you direct it to feed it to itself, it can use that in this context and then give you a smart response. So, yeah.
Yeah, I just want to ask Sorry. My question is that is there like a tutorial for the raw code where you can just go and like learn from the beginner level
For
to-
tools like this.
Yeah, for the raw codes.
Yeah, so it's hard to know once you where these are, but there are many YouTube channels that track these. There's World of AI, and maybe in the Discord I can post a few of the channels that I watch, and that's how I've kept up on all these tools. Is I follow these channels that all they do is post videos about new tools, and so that's how things get on my radar. So definitely, I can share World of AI. There's Matthew Berman; he's big on AI. And then once you kind of have an idea on what tool you want to look into, you just search YouTube, walk through tutorials, and you'll find a bunch. So
Thank you.
yeah.